Hello, everyone. Welcome to DevStandup episode 17. And today our guest speaker is Joe Thompson. Is nearing 30 years experience in IT, moving from early support and sysadmin work into the cloud native world with OpenStack and Kubernetes. Today, Joe is going to talk about when everything is burning down, stop and take a breath. It's talking about in IT emergencies, jumping straight into action can actually make the things worse. And in this session, we will talk why taking a moment to breathe matters and how to ensure instant responders have the space to do it when it counts. And I would like to hand over the microphone to Joe, and he could start his talk about this session. So, Joe, here you are.
Uh, yeah, nice to be here. Just to add a little bit to the intro, I am currently a cloud native architect for Clarity Business Solutions, which is a relatively small company based in Linthicum, Maryland, not too far from Baltimore. Mostly what we have right now is we have public sector clients. We have an AWS practice. We have a MongoDB practice that we provide support for MongoDB customers. And we're working on bootstrapping a Kubernetes certified service provider practice as well, which is kind of where I come in. That's one of the reasons that they hired me. I've been there about a year now, and we're finally starting to get that off the ground. But long before I worked at Clarity, I mean, I've had to deal with angry customers, both individual people when I was working phone support for ISPs, and then even on up to like people representing entire enterprises, sometimes enterprises that were public sector entities where it was like, hey, there's a piece of the government that literally can't do its thing until you get this fixed. Hurry up, let's get it fixed. And one of the things I've noticed over and over is there tends to be this pressure, uh, both to just jump in and start doing things, right? You've got an angry customer on the phone, or your manager has an angry customer on the phone, and they're going, look, we don't have time to talk about it. I just need somebody to jump in there and fix it. And so, get on, put your hands on the keyboard, start fixing, start typing, start doing something so that I can tell them that you're doing something. And in a lot of cases, that's actually the worst thing you can do because if you don't even have time to properly assess, number one, what is actually wrong, right? You might be fixing the wrong thing, or you might be fixing something that's wrong, but it's not the underlying cause of things. It's really just a distraction, and you're letting the real problem go by the wayside, and it may come back to bite you again later. Uh, but the other thing is, besides those, what you might call technical, practical aspects, this is a really good way to burn out your staff. And so, one of the things that I've started to push on a little bit, and fortunately, Clarity is great about that, right? Like, this is actually one of the best places I've worked for trying to not burn people out, trying to make sure that people can get done what they need to get done. But I've worked at places where that we're not so uh, careful about putting their staff into the fire. And so one of the things that I've started trying to do as a senior person, as I've gone through a couple of companies, is try to get people to slow down and take a breath and go, what do we actually need to do? What is the impact here? And what are we trying to accomplish? You know, and one of the companies I worked at back in the day was Unisys, and Unisys had this concept of something called a service delivery manager. And the SDM during, normal operations, the SDM was basically an organizer, right? They were basically in charge of putting people in touch with other people that were needed to get work done. But if we were doing an incident response, the SDM's role kind of elevated. At that point, the SDM was empowered to tap anybody anywhere in the company that was needed and pull them off whatever they were working. I mean, if it was a severe enough incident, right? If you're talking about a SEB 1 or what people call a SEB 0, they were empowered to pull people off their normal work that was less critical and put them on this if they really honestly thought this person is needed here right now more than they are needed anywhere else in the company right now. And, that was one of the things that impressed me was that could be very effective. You have to be careful not to go overboard with that, though, because if your SDM starts just pulling people here, there, and everywhere, uh, things can descend into chaos really quickly. So, you know, The flip side of this idea of like take a breath, though, is even though your staff know that they need to take a breath, you kind of have to have the corporate culture and the institutional culture in place to allow them to do that, right? Because if your manager is the one screaming at you to get on the phone, put your hands on the keyboard, and start fixing this thing, then that's not going to be helpful when you're trying to say, look, we need 5 minutes to sit down and assess this. One of the metaphors that people use a lot of the time, and I think at first glance it's a terrible metaphor, right? They say, they use the metaphor of firefighting. So it's like, something is I said burning down, right? Things are burning down, like it's a firefighting metaphor. Well, the problem with that is in a lot of firefighting cases, there are literal lives at stake, right? And in most IT disasters, if you will, there aren't really lives at stake, at least not directly. I mean, there may be money at stake, and indirectly, if people depend on some service, there could downstream be lives at stake, but it's usually not literally like if you don't get that server up in the next 5 minutes, somebody's going to die. Whereas in a firefighting situation, it literally can be if you don't get this fire under control in the next 5 minutes, someone will literally die. So at first glance, it's a terrible metaphor, but then I thought about it and I realized it's actually, on a deeper level, it is kind of a good metaphor, because when firefighting crews roll up to a fire, they don't just all roll up and unroll hoses and dive in. They establish incident command. They decide who's going to do what. They decide what is actually at risk here. Are there people in this structure and that we need to get in there and get them out and try to save their lives or try to save them from being injured? Or is this just a structure fire and there's no actual lives at risk? And therefore, we shouldn't risk our lives just trying to save a structure. We should then just keep it as a defensive operation, save it if we can, but it's not worth a firefighter's life to try and just keep a house from falling down if there's no one inside it. So that's the kind of thing that there's a balance there. And like I said, it's not to say that when somebody's losing millions of dollars per minute on an outage that that's not important, but it's not life critical. And I think a lot of the time we use these metaphors of things that are life critical, and it kind of preconditions us to go, oh no, things are burning. Like we literally think of it in terms of things are burning. Somebody's going to die, and nobody's literally actually going to die if we don't fix it. Just someone will lose money, and losing money is a whole different, magnitude of problem. So, I don't know that was kind of a lot of thoughts in a stream there. I don't know if you have any questions at this point.
Actually, yeah, you can continue, and when I have any questions, like I will
Yeah,
just ask at then. Yeah, yeah, you can continue.
yeah. So, one of the things, just in terms of practices that I've seen there, like I said at the beginning, there's this temptation to just get everybody on the phone on a big conference call, and the technical people are going to do their thing, and the managers are going to chatter amongst themselves, and the customer is going to be on that call. And the idea is everybody's on the call, so everybody knows what's going on. I think that often, that's kind of like if all the firefighters just jumped in with no incident command, right? I think that can be one of the worst things that you can do, because now you got managers talking and the technical people are trying to talk amongst themselves and figure out what they're going to do. And the customer's on the call and the customer's like, what did he just say? What does that mean? Is he saying things are going badly or are things going well? And, there's this, once you put more than a few people on a call, and especially once you put people on a call that are there for different purposes, that call starts to deteriorate. And it really actually starts to impact the ability to fight this fire, if you will. And I think a best practice that I've seen in the past is you have the technical people on a call and the technical people that you need, right? Usually you don't want to just wake everybody up and have them get on the call just in case. You want to get the people on the call that you need on the call right now. And if you need other people on the call later, then you bring them in when you need them. And in the meantime, you let them sleep, you let them get their regular work done, whatever it is they're doing. You may give them a heads up and say, hey, we may need you later, so be ready to join this call if we need you. But it doesn't benefit anybody to have people just sit on a call and listen for somebody to say, okay, it's your turn now. When it's their turn, just have them jump on. But the other thing is, if you have customers on the call, if you have managers on the call with the technical people who are actually trying to get the work done, there's a tendency for them to want to constantly ask for status, to constantly ask for how things are going. Sometimes customers or whoever's system is being affected feel the need to express their displeasure, sometimes quite pointedly, and it doesn't really help. You know, I'm not saying that customers don't deserve to be unhappy. It's their system, it's broken. Yeah, of course they're going to be unhappy. That's totally understandable. Uh, them expressing their unhappiness to the people trying to fix it doesn't really get it fixed any faster. It just makes those people feel bad. It makes those people feel aggravated. And that in turn is going to slow them down. It's going to make them more likely to make mistakes. And the thing that you're trying to avoid here above all costs, especially in a critical situation, is let's not make any more mistakes, right? Like something happened. There's something that broke, something that was missed. Somebody made a mistake and caused this incident. Let's not compound that. Let's keep everybody calm. Let's keep everybody productive. Let's keep everything moving along and make sure that we are working toward the solution, not just, you know, doing anything we can think of. So I always start with take a breath, right? It's something has gone wrong. A few people have been paged. They've gotten on the incident call. What is going on? We know what you got paged for, but that may not be the actual problem. It may be somebody saw something, hit the pager button, people get on and they realize, oh, this is actually a much deeper problem. There's something fundamentally wrong here, and that's just the symptom. So it's always worth taking some time to investigate first. Now, whether that's 5 minutes or 1 minute, or it may literally be something where you just know because you've dealt with this problem before, it's critical. We need to start fixing it right away, but we know exactly what it is and we know exactly what we need to do, right? But you need to take that time to do that initial evaluation. Just like the firefighters coming into the fire, evaluate how bad things are and what is likely to happen. And then the second thing is, don't let that call get too crowded, because when there's a big incident going on, everybody's going to want to get on that call so they can be, get right up close and feel like they're in the middle of things and they know what's going on. But often, if you have the technical people and the non-technical people on the call, the non-technical people won't know what's going on. And then they're going to feel like, well, I need somebody to explain it to me. So what I've seen in the past as a best practice is you'll actually have two bridges going. You'll have one call for the technical people to do their thing, and then you'll have another call, and that's the status call, right? That's the one where like your service delivery manager or whoever gets on that call periodically to deliver status updates. Somebody who is technical but also knows how to talk to managers, talk to executives, talk to customers, and give them a coherent update that they can understand about what's going on. And that keeps them from bothering the technical people. I say bothering, I mean, it's understandable why they would want to, but at the same time, having somebody ask for the eighth time, what are you doing, doesn't, again, help you solve the problem. It doesn't help you fix the problem. It just annoys you. And the other thing is, unfortunately, I have seen this in the past as well, and I've seen it from both customers and from managers, and even sometimes from other members of technical staff who are frustrated because they feel like they're trying to fix their part of whatever the incident is, and they can't get something done until somebody else does something, or they feel like somebody's doing something wrong. You will occasionally have people on that call, especially if you have too many people on the call, who will literally get outright abusive. And there needs to be somebody who says, there needs to be ground rules for the call, and somebody who's enforcing those ground rules. And those ground rules need to be things like, look, we're all stressed out. You cannot swear at my people. You cannot constantly demand updates from my people. You will get updates as we can give them to you. We will give you all the info that we can give you, but you cannot sit on a call and demand it from people. You cannot be abusive to people. You cannot swear at people. You cannot talk about how much money you're losing for every second this goes on. And if people break those rules, at some point, somebody needs to be empowered to say, okay, you're off the call and you're not coming back. We will fill you in later and we will keep you informed, but you're not getting back on this call again. So, that's those kinds of things are the whole idea is assess what is going on, know what you need to do, and then while you're doing it, keep people from coming in and sticking their oar in when it's not needed, when it's not helpful. while you're trying to get that done. And hopefully, if everything goes smoothly, yeah, you had an incident, you make steady progress. Those steady progress updates come out to the people that need to receive them. At some point in a timely fashion, the incident is over. You can then work on, making your root cause analysis and providing that report, hopefully without the stress of actually still dealing with the incident on you. And everybody's, if not happy, at least they're not angry anymore. Sometimes that's all you can hope for, is not that they're happy, but that they're at least not foaming at the mouth.
Yeah.
But that's, like I said, there's the idea of doing that. And then you have to build the culture that allows you to do that. Because you can't do this as an individual team. Well, you can do it as an individual team, but then it's very easy for somebody to ruin it. Some manager comes in and says, well, I got a customer breathing down my neck, I'm going to put them on your phone call. No. As soon as you have managers doing that, that manager is breaking the rules. They're making things worse. They may think they're making things better. They may think they're making their customer happy. They probably aren't. They're probably putting their customer in a situation where the customer is just going to be even more unhappy because it's going to take even longer to fix their problem. So there needs to be, it's kind of like when we talk about blameless retrospectives, right? The idea is we're not trying to figure out whose fault it is. We're just trying to figure out what went wrong, right? This is kind of the blameless incident response. We are not here to figure out how much money the customer is losing because this is going on. We're not here to figure out who's not typing commands fast enough on the keyboard. We're here to fix this incident. We're here to get it done in an orderly fashion. And anything that goes against getting it done in an orderly fashion is not good for us. It's not good for our customer. There's the temptation to say, well, okay, I understand that's how we normally do things, but this customer is special and they demand a higher level of contact. And so we're going to give them that higher level of contact. And you put them on the call. And what happens is, there's kind of a clock that runs. Everybody has kind of that burnout clock that runs. And the longer you sit them in those everything is burning situations and then make things worse, the quicker that clock runs out. And so what kind of service level are you going to have with that customer if the next time that something happens, the key people that you said, well, okay, I'm going to go ahead and put this customer on that call, those key people got fed up because all this did was make it harder for me to solve their problem. So they quit and they go somewhere else. Now you don't have a lot of key people. You've had staff turnover. You've lost institutional knowledge. The next time that high priority customer has an incident, it's going to take you that much longer to respond to it, to fix it. There's going to be that much less ability on your team because now you've lost people who were experienced and you've replaced them with new people who, while they may be skilled, they don't have the institutional knowledge of how things went with that customer that the people who left have. So you're always trying to avoid that burnout clock running out. That's the main thoughts that I have on this.
All right, that was kind of your complete speech, right?
Yeah, basically. So yeah.
I really kind of value this topic, and I think that that's really underrated. I'd say notion in IT world. Like most of the time, I see that people see technical skills more important than this. But in terms of this incident, I don't know, the disaster, I feel that this kind of psychological skills are more important than the technical skills because if you don't know how to manage your stress level in terms of this crisis, then like your technical skills like won't really help you much. And from like what I understand, like you are talking. Thanks for sharing your experience, by the way. And do you think that in terms of these disasters, like when there is like big crisis happening, there should be some organizational playbooks or runbooks for the incident responders? They have to follow religiously if something goes wrong, right?
I think it's like I said before, if you know exactly what has gone wrong because you've seen it before and you recognize there's 8 different indicators that this is the situation. We've seen it 3 times before. Why have you seen it 3 times before? Maybe you need to do something about that, but you have. So you know what it is. You know what to do to fix it. You have a playbook essentially, or you should, for something that happens that frequently. Yeah, go ahead and start executing if you are very certain that you know what's going on. I think it does behoove a lot of enterprises, though, to do that kind of testing and playbook writing, and even like a playbook for investigation. Okay, if we get an alert about this, what are the first few things that we check out? We've actually been working on a playbook for that kind of thing, for certain kinds of errors that we see over and over, or not errors, but support tickets that we see over and over at Clarity. That's one of the projects that I was working on last week after I got back from KubeCon, was helping somebody out with that, because it's like, okay, we have a ticket about, in this case, TLS errors, right? There's probably 4 or 5 things that we just want to have somebody show us right away if it's a TLS error, and that's going to help us investigate the issue. And then based on what the issue is, there may be 5 or 6 or 7 different things that we'll have them do, depending on what it is. Or maybe we need some further investigation. Okay, we know it's in this area. Can you show us these more specific things? Yeah, you definitely need to have playbooks for that kind of thing. Now, how rigid you need to be about them, it depends, as with anything else, the answer is it depends, right? If it's something that is very critical in the moment, and you know that the consequences of doing the thing wrong are very dire, right? Then you do need to make sure that that playbook is written to be extremely safe to execute, and that it is always executed very strictly and very carefully. Now, the other thing that I recommend for things like that is, to the greatest extent that you can, use safe automation. Everything you do should be done through something that where you have a double check before it actually executes, right? We're going to do this. If we do this, is it going to have any side effects that we don't know about? Have something you can run to say, well, if you do this, it's going to destroy, your production database environment, right? If you do this, just to take one example, you've got production down because somebody went in and deleted a bunch of, middleware or front end web servers, right? So you might think under stress, well, okay, this is simple to fix. I'm just going to do a Terraform apply. It's going to bring them back. They're going to come up. They're going to connect to the back end, et cetera, et cetera. What you don't know is that somebody adjusted things in a way that you didn't anticipate. And so if you just blindly do that Terraform apply -auto proof, it's going to destroy something else critical. And so it's always, Terraform has a built-in plan, right? You can do a Terraform plan and you can see, oh, why is it going to destroy the database environment? What's going on there? Oh, we need to investigate that and figure out why that's going to happen and how we can have it not do that, because that would be even worse than what we're doing right now. Probably somebody did something they shouldn't have, but again, if you don't know what you're facing, if you don't know the true depth of the situation, you're liable to do something that's just going to make things even worse. But
Yeah,
yeah, I think playbooks are very, very important for things like that, and to the greatest extent you can, they should be automated and safe and double checked and executed, with a strictness that suits the gravity of what they're intended to address.
right. Yeah, playbooks I think, like, for example, like you mentioned that if you know like what you are doing, basically you have to follow. But the thing is that, like, in ideal world, let's say, yeah, if the people in the team like are gonna work in the organization for years, I don't know, for their lifetime, so yeah, then fine, like there is no like need for written playbooks. But let's say if after 1 month half of the team is gone, and then when the new people join, so they should understand like there's a written playbook that they could execute, because they don't know about this disaster much, but there is like a written playbook. It's kind of organizational culture also that should be implemented to people, that they should follow religiously in case of like if disaster happens. Maybe all the employees know that, but if new people joins that, they don't know about that, they haven't seen any disaster in the company, and we shouldn't expect from the people like know everything, like how to react. I think like every organization should outline their own disaster playbooks, and then like every employee like should get acquainted with that and understand that what they have to do. if something goes wrong.
Yeah, and going back to the idea that I said about, don't bring more people in than you need to. Something that I became very familiar with when I worked at places like Unisys was the idea of the phone tree, right? The pager goes off, there's the on-call, the primary on-call, if you will, and they're going to get woken up, or if they don't answer because, whatever, then the secondary on-call is going to get woken up. And then that person is in charge of basically doing issue triage, right? And figuring out, do I need to call somebody else? Do I need to call higher management to call somebody else? Is this something that I can fix myself, or does it demand skills that I don't have and we need to bring additional people onto this call? But, going back to that idea of don't bring more people on the call than need to be on it, because if you've got people sitting around just on the call because somebody said, well, we need to make a show of force, right? We need to show that we're throwing everything we have at this problem. Well, you're not really. You have people just sitting around on the call waiting for somebody to kind of verbally tap them on the shoulder and say, okay, we need you now. Just let them sleep until you need them, because that burnout clock is running every minute they're on there. Even if they're not the one with their hands on the keyboard, the burnout clock is ticking. And when the burnout clock gets down to zero, they're going to go, I need someplace else to work. And
Hmm.
that's at all costs. That's what you want to avoid. You
Yeah.
know, the other thing about that is, you know, it takes longer to recover from that. People go, well, okay, you were on an incident last night, so you can come in late tomorrow. Well, maybe you should let them take a little more time than that to recover, because the fact that you were on an incident from 12 o'clock to 4 in the morning, and they go, okay, well, you normally come in at 8, don't come in until 12, right? That's not how that works. The burnout clock is not 1 to 1. It takes a lot longer to recover from it than it does to burn it down. So you have to be cognizant of that when you're talking about after action, if you will. When you're going, okay, how do we recover from this? What do we need to, what slack do we need to allow people to have as they're dealing with, just kind of catching their breath from the incident?
Yeah. But I don't know, in your experience, like, have you worked with really global organizations? Let's say they are serving products to pretty much whole the world. Uh, in that situation, first, you mentioned in the beginning of your talk that if there is no human factor, like say we are not saving anyone's life, unless you are not working in the kind of healthcare sector. Okay, this is a different topic,
Right.
but yeah, but if it's, let's say, I don't know, some kind of SaaS or I don't know, some kind of product that serves like global customers, it's like a really big organization like Amazon or I don't know Google, for example, if they are down and it's a big impact for the world, do you think that in those situations, let's say if there is like one on-call person that who cannot fix that and it needs like team support, then let's say if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, then everyone like should basically sacrifice their sleep and just to get into action, just to save billions of dollars for the organization. Like, well, what's
You
your take?
do have, there is some, I mean, when the amount of money starts going up, or when the amount of customers of the customer, if you will, affected starts going up, yeah, it tends to increase the priority. One of the things that I always point back to, though, is if you've got billions of dollars at stake, if you have millions of customers' experiences at stake, if you're depending on one specific team in one specific location to serve that need, you're understaffed. You
Mm,
really need follow the sun support. You need people in multiple locations across the world so that you can. And I've been in environments where those incidents were handed off. You know, the US team deals with it until it's time. And when it's time may mean either it's at a certain point in the day, or it may mean this team's been dealing with this incident for X number of hours. It's time for them to hand it off, because you can't just keep people on the phone for 16, 24, 48 hours at a stretch. Again, that's not solving your problem. That's just burning people out. You need to have, and if the amount of money or the number of end users at issue is really that high, you need to be putting some money. And most organizations do. I mean, I would be very surprised to hear that anybody with billion-dollar revenues does not have follow the sun support for pretty much everything critical to their enterprise. But there is a certain scale where you start going, well, we don't have this yet, We haven't made that much money. We're starting to make that much money. Do we need this? And my opinion on that is if you're asking the question, the answer is probably yes. You need to be putting the resources into having enough people so that you can give people a break when they need it, so that you can have fresh eyes on it. Because the other thing is, incidents evolve. And so you may have an incident that starts as one thing and then it has follow-on effects. And if the people responding to it are tired and they're cranky and they haven't had a chance to take a break and get a cup of coffee, eat a decent breakfast or lunch or dinner or whatever time it is for them, then they may miss the evolution of that incident into something else. Whereas you put fresh people on it and they're going to go, wait a minute, what's going on there? Why is the storage array doing that? Why did we suddenly scale down when we should be scaling up? These are things that may get missed if you have people just sitting on it on the call for a long time, burning out, and just kind of your edge dulls.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how sharp you are, no matter how skilled you are, the longer you deal with something like that, you're going to miss things.
Mm-hmm. So basically, what you are saying that, let's say, if you are a global organization, you should have flexibility that if a problem is right now visible for the US team, and after some time, US team should be able to hand over to the problem to another region, like where people are already, let's say, waking up and start working, right?
Either to another region, or you do sometimes have, you might have a team in the US. For example, there's a lot of customers that, especially public sector customers, where it's like, this has to be handled by US people. Or, it might be European. This has to be handled by people in the EU, for data privacy reasons or for, you know, whatever reason it may be.
That's what I was saying, yeah.
Have, yeah, have another team that's their job is to be the second shift team,
Okay.
or be the third shift team, somebody that you can hand off to.
Mhm.
People think about it in terms of 8-hour shifts. I don't really like the 8-hour shift concept. I really feel like you should have 4 shifts so that you're going in 6-hour increments maximum, because if you don't have a little overlap between, then you have no opportunity for handoff to happen.
Mhm.
It's like, all right, it's time for me to go. Good luck, guys. And like, that's not a good handoff.
Yeah. Right. And also, like, last kind of conversation I would like to have also, I really like this isolating the technical people from the customers and non-technical people in case of disaster. I also really feel that if some disaster happens, I don't know if it's developers, if it's sysadmins or someone, they should have their isolated environment as a medium of exchange. Like let's say we need like 5 people, and we don't want any other communication from outside world, because everyone just start like writing that fix it, fix it, fix it, and those basically distracting people's, and they don't know like how to focus on the work rather than just answering people. And I think you made a great point that they should like one technical person as a bridge between these customers and business people and the IT, and it should always like basically pass through these status updates from the developers to customers and the business play, because business client customers usually don't care about like what's going on in the database or in the website. They only care that why my website doesn't work. And I think in those situations the most important role is the guy who sits in between to let the people work, developers on the incident,
Hmm.
and let the people other side just calm down, like just let them down, like everything is going fine, don't worry, we're gonna fix it. And basically very interactive, like being like really interactive and showing that we are actually working on that. Because like last this Cloudflare instance, I really liked that they were really frequently like sharing the stuffs updated, and I saw that like they're actually working on the problem. So that's really nice in their side, that it really made me feel that there is something going on, and like we are getting this regular update from the people. Yeah, I think I mean I have worked also some organization that there is no like such culture that when something happens then like everyone like starts to writing developers or technical people, and basically they don't know if they should answer the calls or I don't know some Slack messages or concentrate on their work. Like it's like really messy situation, and it really distracts people, like they don't know how, like how what to focus on really.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where even if you know somebody on the call is not your manager, and even if your manager has explicitly told you, look, he's just going to blow off steam, you can just ignore him, right? The fact that you've been told you can ignore him, the fact that you intellectually know you don't have to listen to that guy, he's just being loud and he's going to be loud and that's okay. It doesn't matter. It still adds stress to the situation. It still makes you that much more likely to be like, well, if we don't hurry up and get this done, he's going to go off again. So let's get this done as quickly as possible. And that's when you start cutting corners. That's when you start missing things. That's when things go from making progress to getting worse. So,
Yeah.
that's and like I said, I understand that customers sometimes want to be in the loop, but there are ways to keep them in the loop and make sure they're getting all the info that they need
Hmm.
and make sure that they're getting timely status updates without them adding to the problem rather than you resolving the problem on their behalf. And, speaking as a technical person myself, I mean, I have developed the skill over my career of explaining technical issues to non-technical people. I mean, I'm still not perfect at it. I have had occasions where I explained something and I thought I explained it very, simply and clearly, and I get that kind of deer in the headlights like, okay, but what is going on? Can you explain it again better? And it's like, okay, let me try again. Somebody who can step between those two worlds so that the technical people can think and talk in their technical language to each other. And yet you have this person, it could be like a lead SRE, it could be an SDM, it could be a person you hire specifically for that role, and you give them their special title of whatever. Like, that's their whole job, is to say, all right, I'm going to be on the call with the technical people. I'm going to listen to what's going on, right? I'm not going to bother them. I'm not going to constantly demand status updates from them because again, that's just adding to the problem. But I'm going to listen to what they're saying and use my technical understanding of their expertise in their domain to then summarize and get back to the customer, get back to management, get back to whoever is affected by this, and give them an update in terms that they can understand so that they know. Now, I say feel sometimes. I don't want them to feel like they've been given info and they haven't actually been given info. That kind of sometimes people say, I want you to feel taken care of. And it's like, but I don't want to feel taken care of. I want to actually be taken care of. I want to give them the info they need. I don't want them to just feel like they got the info they need. But they need to get the info and they need to feel like it as well. So that both of those things need to happen. But, give them the info they need. Make them know that they've been taken care of. Make them know that the incident is progressing. Or maybe if it's not progressing, maybe somebody needs to deliver some bad news to them. Like, there is data loss. It is not recoverable. Here's the extent of it. We're very sorry. That's something that you don't want to have to make your technical people do if you can help it, because they're trying to minimize the extent of the problem and keep it from getting worse. And if they have to deliver bad news in the middle of that, everybody gets stressed out. So, you know, it's not like technical people are delicate little flowers. I mean, anybody who's been in a room with the sysadmins and heard them swear at each other probably knows that they are not delicate little flowers, and neither are most developers that I've met either. But at the same time, it's that no matter how skilled you are, no matter how resilient you are, there's only a certain amount you can take. And while some people, it seems like it rolls off their back, even with them internally, it's taking its toll. And you want to minimize the toll that it takes so that things can get resolved.
Yeah, yeah, you really nailed it about your like the new skill that technical people, I think they should know how to interpret the technical language to human understandable language because yeah, you can talk with your I don't know colleague in a way that like it's really easy for him to understand like when you are talking technically, but it's really hard to communicate that language to the people who doesn't know anything about like your skills, your technical capabilities. So I think in that sense, in organization, if developers cannot do such job, I think there should be this kind of, as I already mentioned, that the middle guy, like who has this skill, he shouldn't like really technical, but he should be able to communicate this one language to another language that not kind of translation. that, for example, our developers are doing this, and maybe it's kind of sound technical, but it should be understand and like spoken in a way that like a regular person can understand that what's going on actually in the background. Yeah.
There's a book called The Mythical Man. Have you heard of this?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so there's a book called The Mythical Man Month by a guy named Fred Brooks, and it's all about kind of software development from the perspective of he worked on a major software reengineering project back at IBM in, I want to say it was either the late 60s or the early 1970s. And he learned a lot of lessons about what worked and what didn't. And so he wrote this book called The Mythical Man Month, and I like to call it the most important book that sits on people's shelves because a lot of people have it and have never read it. But one of the concepts that Fred Brooks has brought out, and he's done multiple editions of the book and kind of elaborated on some of this over time. You know, some of the most important concepts he brought out is, he said adding people to a late software project makes it later, right? Because you have to get them up to speed. They have to learn what the tools are. They have to learn what the architecture is. And somebody has to do all the explaining and the showing and the teaching to them. And in the meantime, those people on this late software project are not working on developing the actual project. And so it slows down. And so there's kind of a parallel here where adding people to an incident call makes the incident resolution slower because, of course, they want to be brought up to speed and they want to hear from the people what they're doing and et cetera, et cetera. And the more of that you have to do, even if it's not the people resolving the incident doing it, the fact that it's being done kind of in their hearing is adding to their mental load of what they're trying to keep track of. Because no matter what, there's a background thread in their head of they're going, all right, I need to listen to this. And if somebody says something that's wrong, I need to correct it before it gets out. People start believing something that isn't true. But the other thing that he came up with was the idea of a software development team as like a surgical team, right? Everybody in a surgical team is there to accomplish a goal. We're going to get this guy's appendix out before it bursts and kills him, right? But everybody doesn't do the same thing on the surgical team. You've got the surgeon, you've got the anesthesiologist, you've got the scrub nurses who are bringing tools back and forth. You may have other people in the room for other reasons. You may then go, well, he's got more problems than just a bad appendix. He's got, there's something else going on here. We need another consult from another surgeon, right? And so you don't have those surgeons standing by in the operating room just in case you need them. You bring them in when you need them, and you bring them in, you know, as you find out that you need their expertise. And I really like that metaphor of the surgical team because it doesn't just apply to surgery and software development. I feel like it applies to incident response as well. You've got the people not only in the different technical domains, but you've got the other people besides the technical people whose job is to do things like know what's going on and provide that status update in a comprehensible way. Uh, Bring additional info back to the team that's doing the incident resolution if they need it and they don't have any other way to have determined it. Like, hey, just so you guys know, we're starting to see this problem in another region. So maybe it's bigger than what you're working on here. That could be important info. You need somebody whose job it is to know that that's important enough to kind of interrupt things and go, heads up, there's something else going on. I really like that surgical team metaphor for incident response.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope that it was helpful for people. Like, yeah, I truly like 100% agree with you. Like, in case of disaster crisis, we should stop. We should analyze the situation, we assess it, and take the best course of action for the situation, not overwhelm or like stressing out about the problem, as you mentioned already.
Yeah.
And yeah, whatever basically you said, like, yeah, people actually like should follow those guidelines.
And the one thing that I want to make sure that we get in here too is, and I kind of mentioned earlier that as I've gotten more senior in my career, this has become one of my concerns, is every now and then you get somebody who just decides they're going to do it their way. And if the leadership of the organization won't speak up, and if the line management of the organization won't speak up, sometimes you, as senior technical staff, have to be the one to speak up and say, guys, this is not helping. If you're
Mm-hmm.
going to be on this call, I need you to stop talking and be quiet so we can do what we do. You will get updates as we can give them to you, or you will get updates from Jim, or you will get updates from Sue or whoever's job it is to do that. We are not going to talk to you while we're resolving the incident. We are talking amongst ourselves to resolve the incident. And we have another reporting channel for you to get the info that you need. So,
Mm,
like, if you're senior and you have the institutional political capital, if you will, to be the one who pushes back, nobody else is pushing back. I feel like sometimes, as unfair as it may be, it is on you as senior person on the call to be like, listen, 30 years experience talking here. We can't do this way. We got to stop doing it this way and do it the right way.
right. Yeah, I think most of the time the stress and this escalations, making people rush for the situation actually comes from the higher up, because if the management doesn't really push people to act quickly, I mean, they can basically chill out a bit, and without getting into stress, they can resolve the problem. I think, yeah, the leader, I don't know, manager, or I don't know, any team lead, like in the team, is the one like who is not showing that in the title, but actually shows that I'm a leader and I'm able to move my team across the bridge, right? They have to think about those situations, like not letting their people getting behind, but actually like moving them and being on the same page. Like that's, I think that actually what the leader defines themselves.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
like I said, if leadership isn't speaking up, sometimes it's on the senior staff to speak up.
yeah,
But leadership really should speak up because this is one of those things that comes from the top down. I see
okay,
my camera's blurred out. I don't know why that
yeah,
happened, but this really comes from the top down. And if
yeah,
the leadership isn't setting the proper tone, then all the senior staff in the world speaking up sometimes won't make any difference. It's just, things are still going to happen. People are still going to be stressed out. Uh, you know, it has to be something where, and the other thing is if your leadership and all your senior people are telling you we're doing this wrong, you need to listen to them and be like, well, okay, let's talk about this. What do we need to do better? What do we need to do differently?
yeah. But all right, Joe, thanks a lot. I truly appreciate that. I think we could wrap up. I mean, we could talk about hours and I don't know, maybe even days like for this topic. I mean, it's really big and in depth. And I think we could wrap up here. I truly appreciate your takes, your
Mhm.
insight, and your experience, like what you have learned during this 30 years of IT experience you shared with us. And guys, that was it. That was it. I hope it's useful and it adds some value to your also like experience, like what you are doing right now. And if you would like to be our next guest speaker, please fill in the form under the description below of this video, and our team will contact you, and you could be our next guest speaker. Apart from that, have a nice day, guys, and see you in our next stand up. Bye bye.